Is Manchester City on the attack or the defense here? Well, how about here? Or here? You probably answered attack, defense, attack. And you would be correct, but with one massive caveat. And this caveat is the key to unlocking the reasons behind City's poor season. And it comes from a common misconception in football of believing that attack and defense are completely different phases of the game, but this is fundamentally not the case. Whenever a team is attacking, it is also defending. When it is defending, it is also attacking. Elite teams don't switch between the phases. They exist in both simultaneously. And this is why for the longest time, Guardiola was always quick to correct a misconception of him as a coach. Whenever a journalist brought up the idea of Guardiola being an attacking coach, he never responded without emphasizing the defensive element, always mentioning the best way to defend is to have the ball. And in general, Guardiola was quick to point out how pragmatic he is and his side's defensive history. And looking at his track record confirms this. In 12 of his 16 seasons, his side has conceded the fewest goals in the league. So what did we see change in 24-25? Quick hint, it wasn't just the Rodri injury that led to this. Well, after years of fighting it, 24-25 was the season that we saw Guardiola become the thing that he hated most. A true attacking manager in the traditional sense. That is, a manager who emphasizes attack at the expense of defense. But the coach who sacrifices defense for attack has already surrendered control. And here we see the interconnected nature of these phases, because his defense got worse because his attack got worse. In prior seasons when attacking, Guardiola's shape always looked like this, or more commonly like this. And over the seasons, this 3-2-5 came about in different ways, either a left back tucking in with a right back in midfield, or vice versa, and at times we even saw a centre back pushing up. The crucial part here isn't the front five, but rather this five. And now we get to the crux of the issue. This five is what is called the rest defense. The rest defense refers to how players who are behind the ball organize themselves whilst the side is in possession, or put simply, the side's shape when they're looking to avoid a counter-attack. It is one of the best examples of how when a team is in possession, they should still always be thinking about defending. Because defensive excellence isn't found in recovery speed, it's found in preemptive positioning that prevents the transition. In a previous video, we specifically talked about the holistic tactical problems at City midway through the season. The purpose of this video is to expand on that, but focus more specifically on the tactical concept of rest defense. What this shape meant is that the side was essentially split into an attacking five and a defensive five. It was incredibly difficult for the opposition to transition through the center against a solid block of 3 and 2. But at the same time, this shape also allowed easy wide protection, as the widest men in the 3 could always easily step out to cover the flanks. So what's changed? For multiple seasons, this setup had been consistently giving Pep a box midfield, which facilitated the 4 versus 3 in the midfield. This caused hell for the opposition's number 6 in particular, as he could not cover both of the men in the half spaces. But as the season evolved, so did City's opposition, and eventually they began to develop ways to deal with the box, often leading to 4 versus 4s in the midfield, and no overload against the number 6, essentially making it harder for City to create high-quality opportunities at the same rate that they did in the past. Guardiola's solution was one of the first times we've seen him fully sacrifice defense in order to bolster the attack, and that was through switching to a single pivot for long spells of the season. So now, City often only had a 4-man rest defense, leading to huge knock-on effects. But it wasn't just that City now had a man less. Oftentimes, because teams were defending centrally compact, Pep was aggressive with his wide centre-backs, as he wanted them to operate outside the block, with Gvardiol in particular given permission to be aggressive in pushing up and down the left flank, even if he was part of the 3, leading to growing gaps in the defensive line. All of this led to huge issues. The differential is obviously that City now had a man less in the rest defense, making things harder. But let's look beyond the obvious and dig into the structure. The first issue comes before defending even fully begins, and that is City's counter-pressing phase. When we think about City's old rest defense, whether it was a 3-2 or a 2-3, one thing immediately stands out. They had more players in that crucial midfield area behind the ball. Those 5 players formed a solid wall that was incredibly difficult to play through. The 2-3 structure, City had 3 men forming the first pressing line whenever they lost possession. This created immediate pressure on the ball carrier and blocked the obvious forward passing lanes. If the opposition tried to play through the middle, they'd hit that 3-man barrier, and if they went wide, the staggered positioning meant that the outside player in the 3 could quickly shift across, while the 2 would have had time to move across to a good supporting position. Similarly, with the 3-2 structure, you've got 2 players in that midfield line ready to pounce on any turnover, but backed by 3 defenders behind them, giving City excellent defensive coverage and allowing the 2 midfielders to be more aggressive in their pressing. But what happens with this season's diamond shape? Now, there's often just one midfielder. Sometimes Kovacic, sometimes Gundogan, isolated as a lone counter-pressing presence. Just one player trying to cover the ground that used to be occupied by 2 or 3. This, of course, is made worse by the fact that in this stance, the 3 midfielders at the head of the diamond tend to find themselves ahead of the ball, truly leaving the pivot to fend for themselves in the rest defense. This is simply a numbers game that they can't win. So now the opponent has a much easier time getting past that first wave of pressure, even without having to go wide, so they are often immediately running at the back line. Rest defense is not just about facilitating a counter press though, as sometimes the 2 blocks do get separated, meaning that the rest defense cannot immediately counter-press. But still, we've seen the weakness of the diamond even when they have to drop deeper. The 2-3 shape meant immediate coverage of the entire width of the pitch with that 3-man midfield line, making it incredibly difficult for opponents to find an easy outball in order to be running at the back line. The 3-2, on the other hand, still provided good central protection with 2 dedicated midfielders, but more importantly, created a natural funnel pushing the opposition into those less dangerous wider areas where the centre-back would have time to see the attack coming. The 3-4-3 diamond, on the other hand, offers none of these guarantees. When that single pivot is drawn to the ball, as they're naturally going to be, they're easily bypassed. There's no second midfielder to cover the space, and there's no safety net. Suddenly, opponents have a clear path to run directly at City's final line of defense. Essentially, the opponent can easily play through any of the vertical thirds at will. That's before even mentioning that in prior seasons, the 3-2 rest defense kept their backline much narrower and more compact, whereas in 24-25, the 3-1 and those aggressive wide centre-backs, especially Gvardiol on the left huge spaces between the defenders. Opponents now have obvious channels to exploit behind the advanced centre-backs, or even if the centre-back is deep but wide, it creates the opportunity for true 1v1 isolations. The domino effect is devastating. One structural change to improve the attack cascades into multiple defensive vulnerabilities. Guardiola once said, "We always believe that as long as the ball is far away from our goal, we are safe." But yet, due to the poor rest defense this season, when the ball has been farthest away from their goal, that's when City have been in the most danger. Rest defense is just one of the many elements we cover in Tactical Mastery, which is my tactical analysis program designed over months to teach you tactical analysis from the ground up. And with the season over, now is the perfect time to learn. For years, the most common query I've gotten is how you can learn tactical analysis, and the truth is there wasn't much out there that I could recommend. Tactical Mastery fixes this, and it's the resource I wish I'd had when I was beginning, all those years ago. Tactical Mastery is designed to transform you into a confident analyst no matter your starting point, as the program begins with the fundamentals before moving on to more complex tactical elements. The most important part is that it's taught in the same simple FMS style that you know from the channel, and when you join you get access to a community of other analysts to support you so you never feel alone. To check it out, just click the top link in the description. And the best part is, if you act now, you get a discount using the code in the description.